Hi, everybody. I am here with Simo, who I am so excited to have on. I believe just a few days ago, Dana Di Tommaso called you the god of GTM on Twitter. Told you I was going to embarrass you. Yeah.
You did.
I mean, come on. You are the go-to person. Every single person that I know, every expert, every specialist, and most of the people that I know who go to about Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager specifically, because you know everything.
Well, I know enough to know how much I don't know. I think that's how you're supposed to say it at this point. Yeah, so thank you for the kind words and the introduction. I'm not sure I agree with all of those descriptions of me, but I certainly, let me put it diplomatically, I certainly have put some hours into Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager development. So if that shows as being able to help others with problems or being able to be supportive in that role, then I do accept those monikers. But yeah, the God of GTM is a bit embarrassing, definitely, and a bit over the top, but definitely happy to help.
I don't think it is over the top. I mean, just as like my personal view is I've been following your blog for many years, and sometimes I understand it, sometimes I don't, but most of the time I get it. And I know so many people who follow what you write religiously and make serious changes with their data, with their tracking, with the way they run their entire data analysis and everything they do with data in their company. So it is really a big honor to have you and kind of be able to pick your brain today. And I think that's what's probably even more interesting is that we're not really going to be talking about actual data or how to track it today. So sorry to anyone who was expecting that.
Everyone just left.
Bye. You and I know. Okay, I'll start again. What I was really looking forward to talking with you about today is breaking silos between marketing and the development department. And it's kind of cool because you brought it up as a topic that you would like to discuss. And I know from the clients that I work with that is a big issue. It's usually kind of two things. It's getting buy-in for this kind of project. And when I say this kind of project, I mean data analysis going kind of more in depth and conversion optimization together. So being able to kind of just get the buy-in from your manager, from your team to do such a thing. And then once you have that, being able to break those silos, because so many times have I seen people say, oh, well, we have this really cool idea to do whatever, but the dev is holding us back, or the developers are like, marketers don't understand what we're doing. We've got tons of work. It's not important or whatever. This is me because I'm the marketer, right? So I see the marketer side more. You're probably going to bring in the dev side, which is perfect. So yeah, I mean,
well, I can justify this choice of topic quite simply, actually. It's always fun to talk about tactical stuff, like how to do web analytics tricks and tweaks and how to do CRO tactics to gain growth or whatever. But typically when you start looking behind those tactics, and not even at the strategies behind them, but just looking at why are we doing these tactics? Why do I want to tweak and trick this tool into doing this and this? It almost always boils down to some kind of a communication problem within the company. So instead of doing it kind of, I'm using quotes here, properly by going to the devs and implementing something with a really good governance model, for example, you use these tools to kind of hack around your organizational deficiencies. So you use tools like Google Tag Manager to hack around something that you can't get buy-in for in the company, just like you said, or you use CRO tools with this. What you see is what you get: web editors doing really, really flimsy and flaky JavaScript hacks just to do the variations, when indeed you should maybe discuss with the developers is there a more robust way to do this. So for me personally, I think talking about tactics is the easy way out, and it's an easy way to keep people like focused and get them to go, ooh, ah, wow, so cool.
Yeah.
But the real potential for growth and the real potential for making a huge change is forgetting about the tools and forgetting about the actual verticals and just starting molding the organization so that it better supports these kinds of things. And that's where I am today. My blog is a hobby blog. It's a blog where I write things that I care about. But when I talk about organizational stuff, I really care what other organizations do. And for some reason, I'm so invested in making sure that people don't do the same mistakes I keep seeing on a daily basis at clients or even at my own company. So it's definitely for me a more fruitful discussion, and I'm sure that it is for any audiences as well.
Yeah, I was actually reading one of your articles today, and it resonated so well. One of the sentences that you said, and I'm just going to read, it says, I think is lost to many who've succumbed to ease of finding answers instead of methods. And I couldn't agree with that sentence. So I couldn't agree more with that sentence, because I feel the same. I think people are looking for tactics. They're looking for best practices. They're looking for easy ways out. They're looking for the answers to their questions. And it's the same, by the way, with the conversion optimization. They're looking for, okay, what's the best color of the button? Or how can I just change this headline, instead of building a process and a method around something. And it's the same with data. You just need to have like an entire method to it. I wonder why that is. I mean, why do you think there is such a gap between what you and I say people should be doing and what people are actually doing?
Yeah. Well, I'll take first just a small step backwards. Like one of my philosophies in education and whatever I write or talk about is I don't necessarily think people I don't necessarily think that people should be doing things, but I do think that some people can get really far with just tactics. I mean, we've both seen examples that tactics can lead to like incredible growth in a really short time, especially if the starting point is really bad. Then tactics are fine. You'll get a running start. The thing is that you get infatuated with those things. They're peaks, really peaks in a very short amount of time, and you get infatuated with how effective what you're doing is. But I think that if you're persistent and you keep doing those same tactics for any longer period of time, you'll see them plateau really quickly. And you'll see that those same tactics just don't work for the audiences they've worked for before. And then it's like a sugar rush ending. You'll get like a really deflated feeling, and you can actually end up worse off than you started, because all your strategy had been focused on these tactics. So I think it's for me personally, why I often end up recommending turning to the organization first rather than just relying on tactics is simply the fact that fixing an organization will give you steady growth. It's impossible to fail something that you've managed to really fix in the organization's own health. Whereas just doing tactics, it's like AdWords marketing versus organic search marketing. The first one will give you quick satisfaction for as long as the campaigns are running, but then it might actually dwindle off. Whereas organic search, it takes so much more time and effort, so much more resources, so much more investment, but the ROI will be steadily climbing. So I think that's the key, is that the reason tactics are so popular is because of the current culture of hiring consultants to increase growth, for example. So doing a deal for 2 months helped me create a perfect CRO test, and then a perfect advertising campaign, and then a perfect analytics setup. And they'll do it in the 2 months, but because you only hire them from 2 months, they don't care about the long-term effect of their work. They just want to show that they can get really fast results really quickly. But then when the kind of cooperation ends, you're left again with the situation that the only way you can get growth is with tactics. So it's a weird mindset, but I think it's completely understandable. But my philosophy, and I firmly believe in this, is that an organization could be investing that same amount of money and same resources to trying to get a steady growth instead of those peaks. But who am I to say? I mean, I'm not going to say that it's a universal law or anything.
No, I agree. I mean, I'm interested in the idea, and I had this discussion a few weeks ago about the term growth hacking, and has this actually led to some? I mean, I'm a firm believer that some of the reasons that companies are so kind of focused on tactics and quick growth is because of the mindset that we have today. Everything has to happen very quickly. And there's many things around it that kind of impact it. If you're a startup, maybe you've got investment, you have to prove yourself to the investors. But not even as a startup, we're all looking for very quick solutions and quick tactics to fix things immediately, rather than build a strategy or a process or a method. And then when we do actually think about doing it, most companies that I know, they hire very expensive companies or, huge businesses that take a lot of money from them and build something that isn't actually actionable. It's a nice kind of, we have a brand or something, but it's not really, it's not what we're talking about. So when I talk about a process or a method in my world, I'm talking about, hey, let's not test call to action buttons. Let's test a strategy. Let's test an hypothesis. Let's build a process for optimization, which gets everyone in the organization involved, not just that CRO person, but everyone in the company involved in growth. But growth hacking is a problematic term, because growth hacking suggests that there are minute hacks that you can do, like download your LinkedIn contacts or go into all sorts of different platforms and steal different emails and get the results quickly.
No, that's a perfect way to put it, is how to get the organization involved and why you should get the organization involved. And the growth hacking term has kind of, it has the same problem as any other term in the world that we use. Like, you can't use two words to describe something as comprehensive as what Dropbox has been doing, for example. It's just not. It's just for gratification of conference presentations where it looks really nice on the board. But I think one of the there's a role for tactics, and there's a role for hacks, and there's a role for instant gratification. There's a role for short-term things as well in any growth organization that wants to grow. I think that the fact is that they're just so kind of sexier to talk about than the boring, let's talk to the developer stuff, or let's hire good people stuff. That's so boring because it's not generic. It's impossible to say, this is exactly how you should grow your company in a sustainable way. That's why tactics are kind of fun, because you can always, I know this is a red flag for many, but you can always say, just change the color of the CTA and you might see growth. You can say that. And for some, it will work. Of course, it just will work. And it's just so much easier to put that in a single slide or a single presentation or a single blog article, instead of the volumes and volumes you'd have to write if you wanted to explain how an organization actually functions. And I think that we've become this kind of attention span deficiency stuff, where we're just expecting results really fast. But I think that the organizational problem comes that you love talking about CRO, I love talking about analytics. There are folks out there who love talking about SEO and whatever they're really good at. I think it's easy to forget that no matter how well we do our jobs, like how well you drive a CRO process into an organization, it won't work if the entire organization isn't pulling toward the same direction. And they don't have to have anything to do with your campaign. Like, how does after sales support work? How does what's the recruitment situation in the company? How does HR support the employees? How do the salespeople reach out to the leads? How does the CEO talk to the subordinates? Like, the entire organization needs to be geared towards the thing that you're actually just a very small cog. But if you're doing something that's completely against the grain of the organization, then no matter what kind of results you get, I don't think that they will ever grow roots. They'll just be like there'll be an affectionate footnote in the success story of the company. Like, we hired Talia, and she was amazing, and she gave us these things that helped us grow. But still, if the company doesn't believe in that kind of growth, it will only ever be a success story of the marketing department. and my work might only be a success story of the developers and something like that. So it's, success has to, like data and like results, it has to flow through the entire organization. It can't be confined to just the department who hired you. And I guess that's what I mean when I'm talking about organizational transformation, is that it's kind of naive to think that tactics-driven marketing or even strategic marketing works if the entire organization isn't somehow geared towards this mindset.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting though is I think that our two roles that we play in the company are actually the two roles that can drive this kind of transformation. I feel like, and maybe many other people feel like that in their role, but just speaking from my humble position in an organization, the process we do, the way we present information and how we work with our clients, or if you're inside a company, the data that you provide and the information that you provide to everyone in the company can really drive everyone in the right direction, right?
Really well said. I really agree. The CRO is cross-disciplinary by nature. There's a design aspect, there's a UX aspect, there's a data aspect, there's qualitative, there's quantitative aspects to it. And data, of course, isn't confined to any single department either. So I think what our challenge is, being representative of these verticals, if you want to call them that, is that how do we get this mindset and translate it to these niches that aren't specifically cross-disciplinary? How do we get them to be like, how do we go to a search engine marketing, let's say a PPC, AdWords campaign person who's doing those things? How do we get their work into the same kind of cross-disciplinary niche where it just kind of flows through and through? How do we get everybody in the company to respect their work? It doesn't mean they have to understand what bid management is or how keywords are faring, but how do we get this person or this campaign or this tactic to be as well integrated into the organization's mindset as CRO and analytics can at their best be? And I think that's the challenge. That's how we break down those are the silos. We're talking about how do we get rid of them? How do we introduce the company to these really, really small bits and pieces of success that might be happening all over the place, but because they're confined to this really specialist tactical thing, it might be difficult for them to kind of explain what exactly is happening and how we are doing a really great job.
Yeah, I mean, the day-to-day, when you look at companies and when you look in organizations, people are working as silos. People aren't working with each other. And obviously, as the CEO of a company or as even a C-level executive, you want to break those silos. You might be able to see that it's important and that it's needed. But many times, the people that are actually doing the work on the day-to-day aren't really seeing that. Everyone's really involved in what they're doing. It's important. And the other person is standing in their way. So the designer is standing in the way of the copywriter, and the developer is standing in the way of the marketer, and the marketer is standing in the way of the designer and whatever. So there's all sorts of, and I know this, like when I used to go into organizations to help them, so in the past, I'd get a lot of confrontation. So maybe the CEO would want to have a conversion optimization process integrated in their company, and they'd hire me to do that. But the people, like the copywriters, the designers, the marketers, they would see me as a threat because I was someone that was coming in to either take their job or maybe show them up and make them look bad. So there's all sorts of politics and things that go in to everything. And it's kind of hard to kind of take a step back and look at it from a bird's eye view and kind of say, okay, here's what we need to do in order to change this.
Yeah. There are tactics for organizations as well. So it's and one of the things that I like to mention when this setup that you mentioned, which is really familiar, by the way, when it comes up, is there's this thing called Conway's law, which was coined by this mathematician in the late 60s, I believe. And the idea is briefly that if an organization designs systems, like let's say a system can be a CRO campaign, and let's say you need a campaign that needs to fetch data from the CRM, like user data, or to be able to target your campaign better. If you, as the person running that campaign, don't communicate efficiently with the person who's in charge of the CRM integration, then any systems that you design, they won't be able to integrate either. So all systems built by an organization, they reflect the communication structures within that organization. Or if I'm building an analytics tool that needs to fetch data from the backend, then I need to have a communication structure with the backend people, or else the tools that we use won't communicate either. So the Conway's Law is an amazing, especially in the world of digital marketing, where everything is seen as threatening in a way. Then the tools we build just simply won't be efficient enough unless the organization's communication structure support those tools. And I see that on a daily basis, and I'm really sad about how this age-old polarization between the devs and then something like marketing or communications or HRX still exists. I think there might be justification for it. I've been lucky enough to participate in projects where that's the first thing we tackle, are those broken communication structures. And we have tactics for that. There are many tactics you can use. And, from daily meetings where you have people around the table communicating face-to-face, representatives of different departments working on the project. No computers allowed, no phones, only 10 minutes time boxed. Everybody just says, what are we going to be doing in the next 8 hours? All these different things you can do to fix those things. But I think it's absolutely imperative that those communication structures are fixed. I mean, I don't see any company being able to sustain themselves with tactics if there's so many silos within. And we've seen huge companies fall because of broken communication strategies, such as Nokia, for example, a Finnish example. It was a very unhealthy organization towards the end, and all the decisions just didn't trickle down or weren't consulted with the right people. I went on a tangent there a bit, but maybe we can steer the ship back. Yeah.
I'm interested then. I mean, so we know these silos exist, and we know that they are extremely important to fix if we want to start growing as a company. I mean, just like looking at it as a top thing, this is a very important subject that not many people talk about. And I'm wondering, you mentioned, okay, there's the option to have daily meetings. So, which could be cool. What else can people do? So if I'm in a situation and perhaps I'm not the manager, I'm not the person who can kind of decide, hey, we're now having a complete company meeting with different people. How can I do that? How can I help break those silos and make work easier for everyone?
Well, I think there's only so much a single person can, like, you really do need buy-in from the company, and not just the managers, but from your peers. I mean, it's actually worse if the manager dictates, now you people have to sit around the table. It doesn't work because you're kind of being force-fed into this uncomfortable situation where there might be some really like inflamed relationships between people and being forced to kind of talk about. So I think the first thing to do is get your peers to understand how important this is and try to open the communication channels. One tactic, in addition to these kind of, because the daily meeting, the point isn't to do friendly chit chat for 10 minutes. The point is to look, where are we currently? Are we on the right course with the project? Are we going in the right direction? Are we getting results? So it's just a form of transparency, and anything you can do to improve transparency will improve those communication structures, because people know just by looking at a dashboard, for example, where are we currently? So making your progress and results as visible as possible all the time, so people don't necessarily have to come to you and ask, how are you doing? Where are you going along? We do things like a dashboard. The first thing I do when I go to a project is just build a dashboard with any data that's available. Any data. It doesn't matter what data it is, as long as there's something that shows the current situation. So the people get familiar to the idea that anything you do here will be displayed on that dashboard. So all your results will show right there for everyone to see. And the second thing I do is if we work in a project, we get a whiteboard and we stick post-its to it. Like put things, what are we going to be doing? Put them in the to-do column. What are we working on? Put them in the doing column. What have we finished? Put them in the done column. That's all transparent. That's all showing people, first of all, the project is progressing, that there's progress happening. It's actually a really dramatic moment when somebody takes a post-it from the and shifts it to the done column. That's actually a beautiful moment because you see concretely that something was finished. And having the daily meeting with all these different people who are involved, like developers, designers, managers, business owners, salespeople, doing the 10 minutes around that whiteboard, then everybody will see, the developers will see that, okay, this post-it will not go forward until I fix this blocker. They'll know it intuitively, and they'll have to take responsibility because everybody can see that you are currently being the blocker. And then when you do that, okay, I fixed it, and you remove the blocker, you show everybody, hey, I removed that blocker. Everybody sees you doing it. It sounds like a gimmick and it sounds like a game, but it's actually really, really effective because people concretely see what you're doing.
Yeah. And it's also taking responsibility. And you spoke about it in terms of a whiteboard or a dashboard, but the basic thing here, and I think that one of the most important things here is that you get to see what other people are doing and also the results. And here's one thing that I think is quite problematic. Now, this doesn't happen in very small companies, but as soon as they're like 10 people in an organization, not everyone knows the outcome. I know that this might sound a bit weird, and maybe I see this more in developers. You do your job, or I'm a marketer. So for example, a PPC manager will run their campaign. The developer will build this landing page or will work on X, Y, and Z, but you don't see the end result. So how did the actual customer benefit from what you did? What was the result outside, in the world? How did people receive it? And I think that is also a very important part. When you can get everyone to see, we are creating X, and you did this, and you did that, and you did this, and all of it contributed together to become this amazing thing that now clients or customers or whatever are praising. Having that ultimate goal where you understand the product, the value of what you create is also incredibly important. Because
that's difficult because sometimes you have to wait half a year to see results if it's a slow burning project or if it's a seasonal campaign. So it's not like we hired Talia, she did a great job here for 2 months, now where are the results? Well, you'll still have to wait because it's a slow burn. You'll see them in 6 months when the campaign goes out. So it's that's really difficult. How do we get those results out there? But I mean, there are different types of results. It's already a really big result to ship something. That's already like huge. And it's important to, like, another part of the agile method is to have demos. So like at the end of every time box sprints are these small units of work, like 2 weeks, for example, working on a couple of features. The demo shows that these are the things we just released to the visitors today or the customers today. This is the new form. This is the A/B test. This is the analytics implementation. And just to show that our work here is done. And then during the demo, the idea is that everybody sees what was shipped and we can quickly pivot. If it doesn't work, like in the next 2 weeks, let's have a review in the next 2 weeks of the data. If it doesn't work, we can quickly pivot and do something else. So the idea is that you mentioned that it's really important to show that there's success and everybody's contributing to that success. It's also really, really important to very quickly show that there's been a failure.
Yes, of course.
That's also like that people are afraid to discuss and consultants are afraid to admit, but and it's kind of a cliche, but failures are so much more important to growth than success.
I just sent an email about that. Yesterday, I sent an email about failure. And I was overwhelmed because I was speaking in Madrid a few days ago And there were beautiful presentations from some of the biggest speakers in the world, and only one person spoke about failure. It wasn't me. I'm ashamed to say, because I think my next presentation should be about failure. But this guy, Mike King, who is one of the biggest SEO experts in the world, got on stage and basically said, I'm not making money on this website. Like, I built this website. I tried every tactic that I know. I've tried everything that I know. It's not making money. And I was just riveted by this story, because people don't talk enough about failure. Failure leads you to growth. If you don't fail, if I wouldn't have failed when I got started with conversion optimization, I would have never reached where I am today. I would have never, built a process or gone deeper or being able to kind of really take it in that direction. And it's actually quite interesting, because you were mentioning being able to, so I mentioned being able to see the results, and you were talking about failure. And I think one also important thing is purpose. And I think that many people are missing that in organizations. Most people have them when they join the company, but not everyone. And when you're not around a certain purpose, when you don't have like, this is the value that this company or this organization brings to the world, this is how we help. So even when you have 6-month-long projects or a year-long project where you don't get to see the result, but you have a destination in mind where you know, when we complete this, we are creating amazing value, and we all need to work together in order to do it. I think purpose is important, and failing is immensely important, because, as I said, and as you said, failing leads you into new things, and people shouldn't be afraid to, fail. I mean, within conversion optimization is about failing.
Exactly.
it's just about you sitting there and saying, I know this is going to work. And then and you're just like sitting there going, oh, absolutely. How did I do this? But that's conversion.
That's a maturity thing. Like, if your organization doesn't know the first thing about CRO, all they'll be seeing is that 90% of your tests are failing. And they'll be like, well, so why are we investing in her again? Like, what's the point? We're throwing money away. Well, you're actually, yes, you are throwing money away just to make sure that the money you'll be receiving in the long term is better quality and more of it. Yes. So it's, this is one of the reasons I love talking about the agile model, and all these things like daily meetings and demos and sprints are part of agility. But the one thing is that, fail early, fail fast, fail often, the kind of methodology, because that's where you'll know, that's positive reinforcement. You'll know if you're not getting results that you expected, then your premise was flawed and you need to rethink it. The worst thing that can happen is that you push out these features every single week. And then in 6 months, you look at the data. By the way, does anyone use these? Is this a good thing? And you'll be like, it's too late to change at that point. So there's everything kind of, we're talking about the same things, just using different terms. But I think that most people listening or watching this will agree that there are some universals. It's so much easier to do a case study about failure, because that's almost always beneficial. It's almost always a good thing to say, don't neglect your team members. Don't neglect the bottom line. Try to think of a product market fit. These things are universal, whereas it's difficult to say, we had success by changing the copy to this. That doesn't mean you'll have success with it. So it's much more difficult to give a good case study on success, which will be universally applicable, versus giving a case study on failure. But then when you think about, like, I respect Mike so much, and his points just went up when he did that. He released a blog about underground hip hop as well, and so cool to have somebody. Maybe there's a little humble brag there as well, but it's so cool to have somebody being so honest in his position, because he has shareholders and he has people investing money into him. Since I think Will Reynolds did a similar talk a couple of years ago when we were in Search Lab in Boston. I think he had a really nice way to talk about failure as well. But it just goes to show that, I don't necessarily want to attend a conference where everybody is doing talks about failure, because that would be like the most depressing thing ever. But having, you can turn failure into really inspirational stuff as well. It doesn't have to be like, I suck and everything I do just turns to dust. It can actually be, I came across these obstacles, and this is what I did to fix them. This is what I did to overcome them. And that's really powerful, because it's not just about, I am already like really successful and then I did this and I became even more successful. It's like, I hit a roadblock. I'm only human. And these are the steps I had to take to surpass them. And that's, you're just juxtaposing success and failure. That's when success becomes even more powerful, because it's used to actually fix something. I think that's
as I was saying this yesterday, almost every single successful company you've ever heard of, or startup you've ever heard of, almost went under like a day before it was acquired, right? Whenever you hear these stories, they're like, we were sitting in our bathroom all working together, the four of us, and we were about to take off our clothes because there was nothing left to eat. There's like these terrible stories. And then Facebook bought us, and we're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
But those are the stories. It's about how you almost fail, or you do fail, and it can become so much better. And it's the same with teamwork. So if, like, on topic of what we're talking about, even if things are really bad and like no one's communicating with each other, and for me, it was only until I actually married a front-end developer that I understood how bad things
that
are.
helps.
Yes. Because I tried doing some projects with him, and it took us some time to figure out how to communicate well, because I have my things that I need and he had his things that he needed. But it's the same. Like, even when things are bad and people aren't communicating, there's always a way to fix it. And we know that working together is only going to make it better within team, especially marketing and dev, which I think we have this situation where we are most opposed to each other. But if we worked together, we could influence the entire company and everything that we do.
I think there's some positive shifts thanks to the tools we use, and thanks to like the tech stack of a modern website is becoming more and more focused on what works for search engines, and what works for analytics, and what works for CRO. So the libraries that are currently being used to build a front end, for example, are already can be really easily configured to give the best possible results. So there's, before, I guess, with the old like technology stacks, there was a good reason why IT was so grumble about everything, is because it required a huge effort to make these changes just for the benefit of a single marketing campaign.
Yes.
But today, I think it's a bit different. And similarly, folks who claim to be this kind of non-technical or marketers who have these issues with the tech stack, they might use tools like Google Tag Manager, which are actually really, really technical tools, and they enable these people to do pretty much the same things as IT would be doing. So they're converging, like the terminology they use and the jargon they use and the things they work on are actually becoming more and more similar. And now just the important thing is to avoid people doing things overlapping or going behind each other's backs. Now the important thing is to get them to talk to each other. And now it should be easier because they already share the same terminology. They can talk about things like the front end, or they can talk about things like JavaScript, or they can talk about things like A/B tests, because the terminology is already embedded into both of their workflows in the modern tech stack. So I'm looking forward to these. A tool will never fix an organization, but a tool should support the direction the organization is taking. So I'm looking forward to the tools we use today to better facilitate communication between these two departments that have traditionally been very inflamed, the relationships between them. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think the race to technology is an interesting thing. I love to say that you can have all the tools in the world. You can have all the machine learning and AI and
blockchain,
whatever the current buzzword is, but you still need human beings at the back, writing the copy, creating the design, knowing who the customer is, to create that experience that people want to convert to. So I agree with you. If people treated the tools and the technology in that way, as a way to bridge the gap, as a way to bring the companies together, not as a way for tactics and getting things done quicker, but as a way to break those silos, make sure everyone's on the same topic, that everyone knows what's going on, help each other out, because that is the immense and amazing job that these tools are doing. They're helping people bridge that gap in terms of even the work that gets done. It's not something, it takes less time to do things together.
I have a perfect example of that. We had a project where we were using Google Optimize to deploy an A/B test. And we had some issues. I mean, we were the developers there, but we had a separate front-end team as well. And we wanted to do a simple A/B test, a very simple above the fold kind of testing a different form, on-page form. And we had written all the JavaScript necessary in that Optimize editor, and we had it basically ready to go. You know, we're good developers, so we knew exactly how the JavaScript worked. And then we had our daily meeting, and we kind of discussed that, hey, by the way, we're ready to go live on this test. And then the front-end team was like, oh, that's interesting, but can we take a look at the implementation? And they looked at the implementation, and they said that, hey, this code is really great, but wouldn't it be better if we actually took this and run it server-side? So there's no like JavaScript-based test. And this bloomed into an entirely new discussion where we ended up building like a server-side A/B testing system. So that the variation is actually done server-side. So the HTML like returned by the server is already the one you're supposed to see depending on which variation you're in. So just by, you know, we had a solution that worked. It was a tactic. It used the WYSIWYG editor to optimize. It worked perfectly. There was no problems. Of course, you know, having JavaScript do all that work is a bit, there's the flicker and everything like that.
Yes.
And just by the virtue of having a communication structure with the front-end team and being able to sit around the same table, we brainstormed together a solution that on the long run, it costs quite a bit of money because it required us to build the entire component in the server. But we ended up with a really robust server-side A/B testing system that actually communicates with Google's Experiments API, fetching the API ID and the experiment ID and everything.
And no flicker.
And no flicker, absolutely no flicker. No need to use that really invasive page hiding snippet. So it's this is how it works at its best when you have teams pulling in the same direction, teams intuitively understanding what the other person is trying to do. I mean, the front-end team, they didn't know what they were looking at first, but once they understood that only 50% or 40% or a certain target will see this variation, they realized, hey, maybe it's better to do the server side so the calculation doesn't happen in the browser itself. So we can save resources, we can improve the performance. And that's like I wish I was allowed to do a case study of it, but I'm not. But it would be such a beautiful thing to kind of write up and to show us this is, and it didn't require anything else except being able to communicate our purpose, like the thing you mentioned, being able to communicate, hey, we need to do this kind of testing because we need results and we need to be able to verify those results both statistically and from a UX point of view. And we need to do this kind of a switcheroo. And then when the front-end team, they were intelligent people, so they understood, okay, well, we'll need this and this and this. And it, you know, communication.
It's not always available, unfortunately. It's not always available for companies, and it's hard. And especially if you're working with outsourced companies. So if you're like a small company and you have developers outsourced, or your marketer is a consultant or whatever it is, it's even harder to bridge that gap and be able to get people to take responsibility for more than just their little job in what they're doing.
That's true. It's a reality. And I think personally, I believe that when a company hires a consultant who's an expert in their field, I firmly believe that it's the responsibility of that consultant to facilitate the organizational transformation. I mean, if the consultant just wants to optimize their revenue, of course they'll just do tactics. They'll do they'll make amazing results and get their big payload. But maybe I'm naive in this, but I firmly believe that if the consultant takes maybe their own time or some extra time to help these kind of structures and breaking down these silos and improving these communication in the company, well, the company should like them more and maybe hire them for a longer time and maybe for a different purpose. Now, instead of just a tactic machine, they'll also be the person who facilitates these meetings, directs the talk there and does the whiteboard stuff and does the dashboard stuff. So I'm like, the sentence I use is that like a consultant should work in a way that basically makes them redundant. So teaching instead of just doing, like showing the company, these are my tricks, these are my tactics. I can show them and I want you to do them instead of me, so that I can focus on fixing your organization instead.
That is one of the biggest reasons I went from an agency model to the consulting model that I'm in today, because going into companies and optimizing and doing everything for them, it was great. I got those record-breaking, amazing results. But when we left, the company was no better, in my opinion. I mean, they didn't have the tools to do it themselves. And as a company, as an organization, you want to know how to do everything yourself, have that information and that knowledge in your company. And that's why a lot of my work today is focused on coaching and training the team itself. Here's what I found, but let's do this together and see how together we can brainstorm and think about ideas and how we can make it better. And I agree with you. I think it is our responsibility as consultants to drive the organization in the right direction and help them grow site-wide, not just that specific KPI.
Yeah. Often when a company hires you, they hire you to do CRO work because that's how they believe they will grow. But when in fact you might know better, you might have seen the same situation in a million different companies. And as an outsider who's looking from outside to inside, you have unique perspective on what's flawed in the organization. The people within the organization might not even see any problems because they're so tunnel visioned. So I think that's this is all fun to talk about, and it's really idealistic things that we're painting here. But if there's if there's one key idea is to be able to detach yourself from your organization and think about what actually is needed for growth. It's so easy to get really lost in the systems currently active. And it's so difficult to break those structures when you have a company that's 100 years old, for example. How do you break 100 years of hierarchy and broken talk messages and the top level getting richer and the low level getting poorer? How do you break that? Like, how do you expect an analytics nerd from Finland to do anything about that? It's just I think it's a wonderful playing field, and I think it's so much more gratifying for a consultant like myself to be given a mandate to help fix an organization. I think that's a wonderful challenge. It's so much more fun just to think about how do we track those clicks on the form, or how do we track
that's still important.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah,
it's a wonderful, it's a beautiful feeling when an organization trusts me enough to help them heal in a way. So that's where I am. That's where I am directing my own professional life at the moment. And but like I said, at some point, it might not be for everyone. There are companies who do just fine with just tactics, and all the best to them. You're doing a great job. Just take a step every now and then and look back, and are you being the happiest you are, or do you think your growth is sustainable, or is the growth so anchored to those tactics that, let's say, you pause all your CRO campaigns and all your marketing campaigns, will your company go bust in a month? Like, that's a litmus test for it.
That's a very good question.
Yeah. So it's interesting stuff, difficult stuff as well.
So communication, purpose, less tactics.
Or tactics in moderation to everything else. Maybe that's the right idea.
And a process, I guess, just like having a process set where everyone comes together as a company, as a team, to get shit done.
Yeah, absolutely. And celebrate successes and failures equally. Well, don't celebrate failures, but celebrate success and make failures visible as early as possible.
Yeah.
Having a process for case studies within a company is also interesting. You know, we did this, and it resulted in this. And doing a demo of that, like a 15-minute demo of that to the entire company or whoever is available is a good idea for any department.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Well, this was really interesting. I mean, we went into all sorts of different directions, but I guess, yeah, you and I tend to do that. We talk. But
Well, we didn't mention our babies once. Oh,
no, I was going to say that now. No baby talk.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean,
It's
we're on
fun.
the same page. It's bridging that gap. Communication is the key to real growth, no matter what you're doing within an organization.
Yeah, I'm ready to stand by that, even if others don't believe in it. I do, and you do as well. So.
Yes. It was so great talking to you. And I guess maybe could you tell us where to find you, where people can read your fantastic blog posts?
Oh yeah, so SimoAhava.com, spelled like my name, surprisingly. That's my blog. I'm active on Twitter as well. SimoAhava is my handle. There's a list of upcoming talks on my blog as well. If you want to catch me live, I'm not doing as much travel anymore as I used to, but there are 3 or 4 events for this year booked. We'll be seeing each other, Talia, in Oslo in a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, I think. So that's going to be fun. But yeah, so the blog is probably the best place, and Twitter is the second best place to find me.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much. It was great.
Thank you. It was.
Cool. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.